here with Brian Cody, Kilkenny GA manager, ahead of Kilkenny's All-Ireland final with Limerick. Brian, how much are you looking forward to the game now?
I think everybody is looking forward to the game, of course. Obviously all players and ourselves involved. I suppose not even so much looking forward to it as getting ready for it, really, preparing for it and making sure we're trying to make sure that we get everything right for the day. I'm sure the whole county always looks forward to it, to an All-Ireland final.
And how do preparations go now that there is maybe a quicker turnaround than usually you would have expected in the past, or would have you been used to in the past, I should say? Do preparations change in that sense?
Yeah, well, it is different. It's a very, very tight frame now. We played a semi-final just last weekend, and suddenly, once this week is over, we're into the All-Ireland final week. So that puts a lot of pressure, probably more so on county board officials and all of that, to ensure all the various things that are part and parcel of All-Ireland final day and All-Ireland final time are put in place in that, and they're working very, very hard to do that. And as regards ourselves and the players, there's very little curtail training can be done. We come together obviously, but from the whole point of view of any kind of tough, hard training, there's not time for it really.
Yeah, you mentioned there isn't enough time for tough, hard training. Was that key to the performance against Clare, do you think? There was that 4-week block that you spoke about quite a bit in the aftermath of that game. Was that crucial in terms of using that to the absolute best that you could to get the players ready for not just a semi-final but potentially a final now, and that they are fine-tuned for that game?
Yeah, no, I'd say for certain it was important, because prior to that it was just week on week almost, and obviously you can't do any kind of real training for that. So that gave us 4 weeks. We could use the first week to recover from the game and that, and get ready, and then give you 2 really, really good strong weeks for training, and then after that you have the week of the game. So it was a huge help, I'd say for sure, yeah.
And that performance against Clare is probably, I think you'd admit to, the best of the championship so far. Did you see that coming as good as it was? Because it really was a new level, possibly the best performance we've seen from Kilkenny in championship since maybe the same stage 3 years ago and against Limerick. Did you see that coming from the train that you had spotted?
Well, I knew the preparation was good, and I knew form and training was good, and I knew the attitude of the players was top class. You can never presume what's going to happen or be sure about what's going to happen, but I was certain that we were going to be very, very competitive, and that's the first thing you have to try and be. So we were that, and the players then just grew in confidence, I suppose, and they put a very, very good performance together. There's no doubt about that. And
the performance, like you say, was incredibly good. But something that a lot of people spotted was maybe the mixture in play between going long and going short. Is that something that you spoke to? We know Paddy Deegan, when we spoke to him a little earlier on, mentioned that you have to adapt to the kind of things in the modern game. Is that something that you spoke to the players about, maybe the ability to go long at times but also to use the ball in the short passing sort of style of play?
Yeah, it was probably very, very prominent last day, but I think it's something that the players have been doing, over the past, couple of years even, and maybe hasn't been highlighted as much because maybe we didn't, because of the very, very strong performance last weekend, it was more spoken about. But the players are very, very much aware that the game has evolved and is evolving, and you have to adapt most definitely to what's being put in front of you, and the players have the skill level to do that.
And obviously you've been in situ now 24 years at this stage, an incredible 17th All-Ireland final appearance coming up. How has the game evolved as you've seen it, and how have the demands changed for players and for management alike?
Well, the players, various, like I said, there's an awful lot of short ball being played. You have sweepers being brought into the game. You've got positions kind of very much possibly even go to window in various stages of the game, because it's not a question of you line out your position and you mark your man. It happens because it has to happen, because you have to mark your man, but there's a very, very much a very, very flux situation where people can come and go and move around. But the basics of the game too haven't changed. It's still a game of skill, obviously, but great work rate and intensity and attitude and physicality and pace. All those things are part and parcel of it. So that's the way it has been, and we had to just... we'd be very, very foolish if it's happening in front of our eyes. You can't close your eyes and say, look, we have our own way of doing it, so we're going to do it our way, to hell with it. If you keep doing that, you'll be very unsuccessful for a long time. So we have to try and do whatever has to be done.
And there's a lot of players involved in the panel now. Your own clubman, Kilkenny, is one of them that hasn't played in an All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship final before. With those players especially, will you take a more individual approach towards and maybe chat to them what demands are ahead of the final and what final event is like? Or do you just kind of speak to the team collectively and let them get on with it themselves in a sense?
I know, look, both of those things have to happen, like collective stuff has to happen, but very, very much you have to be very, very conscious of all the individuals, and some individuals need different things to other individuals, and it's about getting to know them and that, and some players will carry on grand, it's okay, an Ireland final, let's go and play it. Other players maybe will need a bit of a bit of, I suppose, just a few messages about the things that can happen and all the rest of it. But it's a question of, it's not just me, but the management team and the people in the backroom team all contribute to that. And just a word in the fella's ear is very, very important at all times.
And we spoke a bit about how the game's changed tactically and how it's evolved since you've been in charge of Kilkenny. But from a man management perspective, not just you, but as you mentioned, your backroom team as well is so crucial. Has that changed over the last kind of 10, 15 years too, in the way you have to deal with players on an individual and more of a kind of a team basis?
I suppose to an extent it has, yeah, but I mean at the end of the day, the big thing I always think that players, I would always encourage them just to be themselves, and you come in and don't try and suddenly become a different person because you're on the Kilkenny Hurling team. Be yourself, bring your own personality to it, and it's up to us then to kind of read our body language and see them. And if, some people might, like I said, need a word in their ear about something, or they all have their own kind of lives to live as well, and pressures maybe, or some people may be under pressure of various things, like any kind of a job, and it's the duty of management and people involved to ensure that that they're looked after in every single way.
And you said there that the players have their lives to live. Of course, you have your lives to live as well. Is there a way that you unwind ahead of this? I suppose it's become almost an element of routine to it now that you are heading into your 17th All-Ireland. Do you have a way of unwinding? Because it is an incredibly stressful time for yourself.
I don't find it stressful, to be honest. I unwind as I walk around the place. I think I'm usually unwound anyway. So on match day I might look excited on the side or whatever, or maybe not. I don't know, but I don't get particularly tense or stressed out about it at all. I just it's something we do, and if I did, I'd better off not to be doing it. To be fair about it, and. The training sessions are really enjoyable. The players love them and we love them because you have lads coming and giving just everything to it and taking on the challenge there to try and win a place in the team, and it's great to be involved in a thing like that. So no, I don't get too excited about it.
Of course, Limerick people will be getting excited too. They're the opposition come Sunday week in the All-Ireland final. How tough a team will they be to take on? Because of course they are going for their 4th in 5 years, maybe reminiscent of the great teams that you managed in the 2000s.
Yeah, I looked at the top team. They're the best team in the country. There's no doubt about that. Champions for the last 2 years, going for 3 in a row. They have everything that's required to be a top team. They have massive experience now, obviously, but they have skill, they have physicality, they have power. They have a huge belief in themselves and a huge team work, a team ethic. All of them together. They don't play. They play for each other all the time, and they're huge opposition. And anybody who's taken them on over the past couple of years in championship matches have failed to beat them. We would be not expected to be in this All-Ireland final. I mean, I understand that and I know that. So the chances of us beating them in most people's minds would be very, very low. But that's the challenge we're facing, that's the challenge we're going to take on. And I would always have just an absolute belief in our players and their ability to go on and do whatever has to be done. But that remains to be seen, obviously.
And you said there that maybe you will be going in as underdogs in most people's eyes ahead of the final. Do you speak about that with the players, maybe use it as a motivational factor, or do you just kind of get on with your own thing? And like you say, there's a huge belief, not just from yourself, but within the entire panel, that they can go on and beat Limerick like they did 3 years ago, of course.
Yeah, well, the players, they know that we're underdogs, and that they understand the enormity of the task, because it is enormous, and that's the reality of it. But at the end of the day, it's not about where we favourites. That wouldn't change anything either. We go out, you take on the challenge. The game will be played out on Sunday week in Croke Park, and everything else goes out the window. What people thought or what people did beforehand or afterwards or anything else doesn't come into it. It's about what happens while that 74 or 5 minutes is taking place.
And you are actually the only manager that has a better record in championship against John Kiley. I know you don't want to speak maybe too much about the individual management side of things, but does the performance 3 years ago, which was just etched in every Kilkenny supporter's memory, does that come into it all? I know when we spoke to Paddy Deegan, he said there's not much about that to talk really, but do you kind of hark back to that when you're speaking to the players, saying that you've done it before, you can do it again, or is this kind of a new panel 3 years later?
It's pretty much, there's a lot of the players who are playing then are not playing now, and some of the players who are playing now obviously weren't playing then, so it doesn't have any influence on the game at all really. If anything, it could be a motivating factor for Limerick, but it's certainly that it isn't something that we get any benefit from.
And finally, Brian, how excited are you personally going into another All-Ireland final? Does that kind of passion remain from the first one in '99 all the way on to now?
Look, it's where we want to be. It's where everybody wants to be. The start of the year to get to the final. It's not excitement. It's just total focus on where we're going. And like I said, if we could win that game, the excitement would happen then, all right, for sure.